Hello and welcome to the Warhammer Podcast, episode 34. I'm your host, Brad. This is my co-host, Eric.
How's it going?
We're taking a hard left turn from last week's episode where we were discussing tournament results and all that goodness. We're going super weird and doing a crossover episode with our other podcast, Solely SIngleton.
Yeah, there was a pretty cool thing that LiQWYD did with Magic cards and 40K.
So, 40K now has a Magic the Gathering commander set. We'll explain to you what that means and how the 40K lore got translated to Magic rules for better or worse, and generally try to evaluate how well this experiment went.
Yeah, it's an interesting crossover that I did not foresee until it happened, but we'll see how well they did.
Just so you're aware of how this episode is going to function, you are listening to a unique Warhammer intro right now, but after we do our transition over, it will be a shared Solely SIngleton Warhammer episode, the same thing for the rest of the episode. So we're going to over-explain how Magic cards work for our Warhammer audience, and we're going to over-explain some Warhammer lore stuff for Magic players who won't be familiar with that. So you're going to have to bear with us as we're trying to bridge the gap here for both audiences.
Yeah, but I don't think we'll get too in-depth. We'll try and keep it a bit high level, so it should be fun.
Yeah, this should be a fun intro learning experience for all parties. So without any further ado, let's jump in.
Sounds good.
All right, now that we've got both audiences here, it is time for the main event. We're going to go through these 4 commander decks. We don't know what the secret layers have in them at the time of this recording. We have no idea when they're even going to reveal those, so we're just going to do the commander decks.
Yeah, I'm super disappointed about not knowing about the secret layers, even though I hate secret layers because one of them's Orc, but, you know, whatever.
To explain things for the Warhammer audience, Secret Layer is a fear of missing out system where Wizards of the Coast tries to sell you something for a super limited time that will not be reprinted again and is usually like a promo version of something or whatever, but with these it's going to be unique cards, so it's super scummy.
Yeah, it's great.
Anyway, let's talk about the far less scummy thing, which is just the commander decks. We've got 4 of them here: Tyranids, Necrons, Chaos, and the Imperium. Each one of them is designed to have you play with a commander or a general if you're an old boomer. And you play with that commander. You can only play with cards that fit within its color identity, which is how Magic splits everything up. And you're supposed to make a deck based around like whatever theme you want within those colors with that commander, usually based around the flavor of your commander. In these cases, it's very clearly the 40K factions fighting it out.
So I guess we'll, real quick, for those who haven't played Magic, in Commander, you start at 40 life, otherwise you start at 20. You have lands that you play that you tap to make resources, which is mana. There's white, blue, black, red, green, and then generic. White is boring. Blue is annoying. Black is cheeky. Red is fun. Green is big.
This is the official color pie by Eric. I can't believe you didn't win Great Designer Search 3, Eric.
I don't understand. They super missed out. But you use those resources, the mana, to cast spells and creatures. Creatures attack players, not other creatures. So it's, one of those little things there. Defenders can choose to block with a creature. Attacking taps a creature, so it's like declares it's attacking and stuff, but tapped creatures can't block. So it's one of those like you have to decide if you're attacking or blocking, whatever. Damage to creatures, if it didn't kill them, is healed at the end of turn. You win when your opponent's dead, 0 life.
There's a lot of other rules to the game, but this is the super generic 5-second overview of how Magic works.
Yeah, in Commander, 100 card deck. Otherwise, it's like 60 or 40 or whatever. But yeah, 100 cards.
You can only have one of every card.
Yes, you only get one of every card other than basic lands because that's how you make mana and resources and stuff like that. But you draw 7 cards, then each turn you draw 1. Otherwise, yeah, just read the card, do what it says. If it says to do something that's outside of the normal, then follow the card. If you're still not sure, you can probably just Google it, being like, how does this card interact with that card? And somebody's probably posted it. So,
And Magic the Gathering has much harder rules than 40K.
yes.
40K has some really awful rules writing. There's no easy way to put it. It's a terribly written game.
Yes. Whereas Magic is Turing complete.
Yes. Magic cards do what they say.
Yeah.
You can always figure out how Magic cards are supposed to interact.
And it only interacts one way. Like, there is a correct way that they interact together.
We don't have to play raw versus rye. There's no, should we play this rule as it's written or as the creator intended? You play it as it's written because it was intended to play as it's written.
Yeah. If you're new to it or whatever, there's some decent resources. There's Scryfall, which has like all the cards and the text and some rules and stuff with it. And for Commander, there's EDH Rec, which has a bunch of Commander deck lists and stuff like that. So if you're interested, take a look at them, whatever. If not, that's the Magic explanation.
Yep. We'll talk about things on a more specific level after that, but there we go.
Yeah.
For Magic players out there who haven't heard any of our Warhammer stuff before, how'd you do it?
Yeah.
For a 3-minute explanation here, the Imperium is in Warhammer 40K, mankind's last bastion of what they are. It's an incredibly shitty place. Everything is awful. All the people are awful. It's a dystopian fascist empire. It's awful.
So it's like real life, but just scaled up.
It's a lot like real life because the game has satirical lore. Chaos is the opposing part of the Imperium. Chaos is a bunch of chaos gods who represent a warped version of reality, and the people who worship them, who went away from the Imperium and are serving evil, conquering, extra-dimensional beings. Basically, would you rather work in the dystopian future, or would you rather work for Satan? And then you have the Necrons, who are a long-dead species who turn themselves into robots because of a long lore thing that I won't go too far into.
And then they went to sleep for a long time, and now they're woken up.
Yeah, they went to sleep for like 65 million years, and they're waking up from their nap, and they're wondering who all these new species are that are on their lawn, and they're going to kill them all.
Yeah, they're the old guys that are yelling, "Get off my lawn."
Yeah. And then you've got the Tyranids, who are as simple as it gets. They're just a hegemonizing swarm of bug monsters that are going to eat everything and turn it into more of itself.
Yeah, they're awesome.
They take over planets by sending out an advance force that is small that will infest a planet, will alter the genes of people so that they then pass on these genes to become basically a mind-slaved race who will cause a rebellion on a planet just before the Tyranids arrive, overthrow like the world government, and turn off all the planetary defenses so that the Tyranids can eat easier. Those are called Gene Stealers, which are part of the Tyranid deck here.
Yeah.
Which is like a sub thing we have to talk about. It's technically a different faction in 40K, but there you go. So that covers 40K lore in 3 seconds that is relevant to this set.
Right. I was like, there's a lot more beyond that, but these are the things that we're talking about here.
Now, let's get into this. We've got 4 decks here. Let's start things off with Tyranids. We're going to talk about the flavor wins, the flavor fails, and some specific examples within each deck. We'll try to keep it pretty brief, like 5-6 cards per deck, and then we'll talk about a couple fun meme things at the end.
All right, let's start off with Biophages. 1 and a green for a 1/3 creature, human Tyranid wizard. It has genomic enhancement. You can tap to add 1 mana of any color. If this mana is spent to cast a creature spell, that creature enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it.
And so, from a lore standpoint, the Biophagist is shown injecting Tyranid serum stuff into a soldier.
I mean, it looks like classic mad scientist radioactive injection.
Yeah, but it's actually a pretty great way to show Gene Stealer cults in the flavor of the game. Like, they make you better and stronger because of the +1/+1 counter for the creature.
Mm-hmm.
But also, you're going to be a Tyranid.
Yeah.
I liked basically the entire Tyranid deck. I think it's like a slam dunk from a flavor standpoint. Biophagus here is a great Gene Stealer cult example. There's a few of them in the deck.
I almost wish that this also like made that creature like a Tyranid. Like it gets a +1/+1 counter and it becomes this in addition kind of thing. Like, yeah, it's a gene stealer. Like it's been altered.
Flavor-wise, I would like the little bit extra on that. It really doesn't need it, and it gets into the whole, we've argued that Magic recently has gone full potato on trying to add way too many words to cards.
Yeah, there's one of those where like a cleaner, simpler design, when done correctly, is better than just word soup.
Yes. Speaking of a clean and simple design, we have Tyrant Guards.
Tyrant Guard is X, 2, and a green for a 3/3 creature Tyranid. It has Ravenous, which is this creature enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. If X is 5 or more, draw a card when it enters. It also has the Shield Wall, which is sacrifice Tyrant Guard to get creatures you control with counters on them, gain hexproof, and indestructible until end of turn.
Okay, so do you real quick want to explain the mana cost for the 40K people who are probably kind of confused by how that was written? X is not 10.
No. So X is any number, 0 to whatever, of any generic mana. It can be green, blue, red, whatever. The 2 is just 2 generic of any color as well. And then the green is it has to be green. So this one is X 2 green. So at the very least, you have to have 2 and a green because X can be 0. But you can also pay X as 5, so it would be 7 and a green, and you'd get the Ravenous trigger because X is 5 or more. So that's kind of what X is doing there.
Yes, and in general, the X is also growing the creature.
Yeah.
So then, Shield Wall, for anyone who hasn't figured it out, Tyrant Guards are the bodyguards in Tyranids. They protect the Swarm Lord or the Hive Tyrant, which is why they're called Tyrant Guard.
That makes sense.
So they've got the Shield Wall ability, which sacrifices them to give hexproof and indestructible, which makes it so that you can't target your other creatures and they can't be destroyed this turn. So it's the self-sacrificing bodyguard ability. It translates perfectly from 40K to Magic, honestly.
Yeah, and I really do like the Ravenous. Like, it feels flavorful. It also just, like, I think it works really well in Magic of its own. It's one of those, like, the bigger it is, it gets to grow, and like you also get something out of it, like drawing a card so you can have more of the swarm enter later on kind of thing. I just really like that.
I also like that Ravenous gets used both ways in this deck, where there's a Termagant and Hormagant cards, and those ones have Ravenous where you can pay X into them and you get a bigger swarm. It's one entity though, so it can be used to show like something is bigger and better, or it can be used to show just more gaunts are on this card.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So let's move on to Shadow in the Warp.
Okay, this one's a neat card. Shadow in the Warp is 1 red-green for an enchantment. The first creature spell you cast each turn costs 2 less to cast. And whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, Shadow in the Warp deals 2 damage to that player. So real quick, an enchantment is just like a thing that sits on the battlefield and does its whatever it says. You can't like attack it or whatever. It sits there and does the thing.
Yeah, so lore-wise, Shadow in the Warp is what Tyranids cause when they invade a planet. The species basically exists like partially in the alternate reality where the magic stuff comes from. That's where the Chaos Gods live and all that stuff.
Yeah, the warp.
Yeah, so they cause a shadow in the warp, which causes any psychic people who have a tie to the warp to basically hear the mental ravenous voice of the swarm. Like, if you could understand Locust and hear them in your head, it would be horrifying when locusts invade your farm.
I mean, it's already pretty horrifying, but that would make it, like, even worse.
So the Shadow in the Warp is actually, like, pretty great at representing it because you can see non-creature spells as psychic abilities, basically, and it makes those hurt your opponent, and it's making your stuff cheaper to cast to show that, like, the Tyranids are coming.
Yeah, it's like a foretelling of, like, the Tyranids are coming, and they're just going to, like, overrun you with the swarm, because there's just so many of them that you're going to cast. It's going to be cheaper, and yeah, it's cool.
All right, so let's talk about some of the big Tyranids.
Man, some of the art on this, it's awesome.
So, like, a lot of these arts are done by 40K artists, not Magic artists. Like, this is their first Magic set.
Right.
And it's amazing how much I can find parallels with some of the 40K artist styles and magic equivalents. Like this Moloch we're about to talk about looks like a Raymond Swanland art, and it's not. It's by one of the 40K artists, but it's got that beautiful, very liney reds and yellows.
Yeah, they did a fantastic job of making the art awesome, but it also feels like magic.
Yes.
Like existing magic art that we're used to and stuff. So, but Moloch is X red green for a 2/2 creature Tyranid with Ravenous, and it also has Terror from the Deep. When Moloch enters the battlefield, it fights up to one target creature an opponent controls. If the creature would die this turn, exile it instead.
Okay, so Molochs in Tyranid lore are basically tunnelers who pop up and eat stuff. Like they pop up like right in the middle of your lines.
Yeah.
And burst out of the ground and eat your whole team when you think you're holding the objective.
It's like Tremors.
It's like Tremors, honestly, yeah. You're right. So this actually, it kind of perfectly works because you can make the Moloch just really big via Ravenous and just have it pop up, fight a creature directly.
Yeah.
And then you've just got your Moloch in play now.
I do like that, like, when it dies, it's exiled. So, like, in Magic, when you kill a creature, it goes to the graveyard. But exiling it is like the super go away, it's not coming back zone.
Yes.
And it feels like, oh, the Moloch just ate him. There's nothing left.
Yes. You're not getting him back out of the graveyard. He's gone.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
So then we've got the only bad thing I'll say with the Tyranid deck. There's an annoying minor issue that just bothers me with the Harridan. So Eric, read the Harridan for us.
Okay, the Tyranid Harridan is 4 green blue for a 4/4 creature Tyranid with flying and ward 4. It also has Shrieking Gargoyles, which is whenever Tyranid Harridan or another Tyranid you control deals combat damage to a player, create a 1/1 blue Tyranid Gargoyle creature token with flying.
Okay, so here's my problem. And I know one of our patrons tried to argue that technically it's written somewhere in the deep lore of 40K that they can be small, but the Harridan is gigantic. It is a huge fuck-off bug dragon.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking like Magic equivalent, it's an Eldrazi-sized monster. This is like world-ending, giant, huge mob.
Okay.
In 40K, for example, it eats up like half of your list to put one in your list. Like, it's big.
Okay. It's a city destroyer.
Yes. The actual model is giant, and it's just so awkward that they correctly made the Hierophant a 12/12 for 12, which is like properly sized. The Harridan is the same size as the Hierophant, and for some reason they made it 3 times smaller. This is my only complaint in the like Tyranids is a 10 out of 10. This is just a minor thing.
I get what you're saying, but one of the things with Magic is power and toughness, which is the 4/4, has never really meant anything, lore-wise at least.
It used to, and it tends to mean something per plane.
Yeah, sort of. Like within reference to each other.
It's gotten worse post-2020. The recent years, we've had some awful, awful power and toughness issues. Before that, it was pretty well established that like a dragon would be at least like a big creature. And then you have humans like cap out at like 2/2 or 3/3 if they're really badass. There's always been exceptions.
Which is just part of Magic. There's always exceptions to the rules. But it's more noticeable in these commander decks because it's supposed to be related to a lore of an external thing. Like that lore already exists. Like the Tyranid Harridan is supposed to be big. Well, in Magic, you can only have so many 12 mana costing creatures because
it would be horrendous to try to play multiple.
Right. Like the way the game plays, you just can't have that many of them. So they have to balance it to a certain point so that the game is fun to play. And as such, we get things like this, where this Tyranid Harridan is supposed to be big, but they can only have so many of them, so it makes it smaller and easier to cast, and has to balance around that. So, like, yeah, it's a problem. And if you look at these in comparison to like other random Magic cards, it's even more hilarious. Because like a random bear is like scarier than some of the like Astartes. But that's just part of what Magic does. So
Okay, so that covers the Tyranid deck. Overall, fantastic. Let's move into the next one. Let's just do Chaos next.
all right. I guess we can start with Lucius the Eternal. 3 black-red for a 5/3 legendary creature, Astartes Warrior, with haste. And it has Armor of Shrieking Souls, which is when Lucius the Eternal dies, exile it and choose target creature an opponent controls. When that creature leaves the battlefield, return Lucius the Eternal from exile to the battlefield under its owner's control. And so real quick, legendary is you can only have one of them on the battlefield at the same time, but it also lets you use it as the commander, the leader of your commander deck.
Yes, and it's basically named character is what legendary means.
Essentially.
So for those who don't know the lore of Lucius, Eric, do you know anything about Lucius the Eternal?
I'm expecting that when he dies, he comes back.
Okay, so Lucius is cool as hell. So this is like a perfect change from 40K to Magic rules.
Yeah.
So Lucius the Eternal is like one of Slaanesch's absolute favorite people. Slaanesh being the chaos god of indulgence and excess and all sorts of awfulness. So Lucius the Eternal is like one of the best swordsmen in the setting, like really good combatant.
Okay.
But Lucius died at one point, and Slaanesh was annoyed that Lucius died. And so Slaanesh made it a rule of the universe, essentially, that if you kill Lucius, and you in any way take pride in having killed him, then you will slowly, like, lose your hair and everything else, and start ripping up your face, and become Lucius the Eternal, and your face will be added to his, like, skin armor, as, like, yet another face on his armor.
Okay.
So anytime somebody kills Lucius, they become Lucius because no one has ever been able to kill him without feeling pride about having made the kill.
Right. And as the legend grows, it becomes more and more difficult to...
Yes.
Yeah. That's actually pretty cool. And it makes sense that, like, whenever a creature kills Lucius, when it dies, Lucius is back.
Yep.
That's fun.
I really loved that one. That is a home run adaptation.
Yeah. All right, we can move on to the Pink Horror, which is 3 blue-red for a 4/4 creature demon horror. It has Coruscating Flames, which is whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Pink Horror deals 2 damage to any target. It also has Split, which is when Pink Horror dies, create 2/2 blue and red demon horror creature tokens named Blue Horror. With whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, this creature deals 1 damage to any target.
Okay, so this is another perfect example of something changing over from 40K to Magic. Great. Pink horrors, when they die, split into 2 blue horrors, and then blue horrors split into brimstone horrors, but they didn't go all the way on this one because there's so much text on the card already.
Yeah.
And they are minions of the god of magic and change and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
So thus, they make your magic and instant and sorcery spells deal extra damage. Whatever you're doing, you're also flinging fireballs at people at the same time because the pink horrors are loving it.
Yeah. I don't know too much about lore on the 40K side, but this feels amazing.
They're honestly just a good card, too. Like, they're really solid.
Yeah.
I love the fact that if they kill the pink horror, you just get 2 blue horrors that make it so that you killing the pink horror did nothing.
Right. It's like, so what?
Which is very how that feels in 40K when you kill a pink horror.
Yep.
So I loved how well that transitioned over.
Yeah, that's a pretty slam dunk. Another one. Oh man, this next one. I love this. Nurgle's Rot is a single black for an enchantment aura, which is enchant creature an opponent controls. When enchanted creature dies, return Nurgle's Rot to its owner's hand, and you create a 1/3 black demon creature token named Plaguebearer of Nurgle.
And this is your classic, Nurgle is the god of pestilence and plagues and all that jazz.
Yeah.
And Nurgle's Rot is just turning into zombies.
Yeah.
Anyone who dies becomes the Walking Dead.
And then you get to spread it further.
Yes.
Yeah, I love this card. Like, it feels very spreading rot, Nurgle, disease, and it's just like a solid card too, like for Magic, in my opinion. I think it's pretty cool.
All right, and to round up the last of the four gods,
We've got Blood for the Blood God! Exclamation point. 8 black, black, red. For an instant, the spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature that died this turn. Discard your hand and then draw 8 cards. Blood for the Blood God deals 8 damage to each opponent. Exile Blood for the Blood God.
Okay, so you missed the most important part. The flavor text is Skulls for the Skull Throne.
Yeah.
The only flaw in this card is that Skulls for the Skull Throne does not end in exclamation point, which it should.
Yeah.
So Blood for the Blood God, Skulls for the Skull Throne, even Magic players who don't know 40K will have heard this meme online before.
Likely.
This is Khorne's slogan. Khorne is the god of war and all that jazz. Violence in general, blood, skulls, you name it. Khorne loves it.
When things die, it's good.
This is also great because it has the number 8 multiple times, which you probably picked up on that this card, it's got an 8 requirement for its generic mana. It draws 8 cards, it deals 8 damage, and you're like, 8 must be important. 8 is Khorne's number. Every Chaos God has a number that is sacred to them. So Slaanesh is 6, Nurgle is 7 and 3, Khorne is 8, and Tzeentch is 9. I think every single number is represented on some card in an important way, except I don't know if 9 was ever. I don't think they put a 9 anywhere for Tzeentch.
Yeah, I don't know.
9 is a lot, whatever you're
9 is a
doing,
lot.
so there might be like a mill 9 card somewhere I didn't notice.
That's possible.
But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's fantastic that this one got 8 everywhere for Khorne, and it's super splashy, like...
Yeah, it's one of those that, like, you want to kill things so that it makes it cheaper, so that you can cast this, so that you can draw 8 cards and deal 8 damage. So, like, kill stuff. Get rewarded.
So here's a great incidental lore thing that works out. There's the phrase, Khorne cares not from whence the blood flows, only that it flows.
Mm-hmm.
This card doesn't care who killed the creatures or whose creatures died.
Right.
If someone else wipes the board and kills everything, you can still cast this cheaper because either way, Khorne is happy that a bunch of shit just died.
Yeah, even if it's your own stuff that was destroyed and killed. Like, doesn't matter, dude. Stuff died. We're at war.
Khorne's thrilled about it.
Yeah, have a reward. Let's keep going. Let's make it further. Yeah, it's cool.
Okay, so there's a lot of good in the Chaos deck. There's a single thing I don't like with it, which is an overarching problem. This is something that happens in 40K, specifically with demons, and it's something that Magic has a bad habit of. The term chaos in Magic is used to say randomness.
Yeah.
Rather than, the forces of the dark gods, which I guess to Magic players, randomness is the forces of the dark gods.
Yeah, something like that.
But because of that, the Chaos deck has a lot of the word random, which is always bad compared to choosing something, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
They really, really, really jammed random in everywhere they could. So the worst example of this is like the Night Rampager shows like exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay, so the Night Rampager is 4 and a red for a 6/5 artifact creature knight with trample. It has Frenzied Rampage, which is at the beginning of combat on your turn, choose an opponent at random. Night Rampager attacks that player this combat if able. And when Night Rampager dies, it deals 4 damage to target opponent chosen at random.
It's just, it doesn't work out well in gameplay.
No.
When you're playing a multiplayer game, people don't care that you randomly chose them to hurt.
Yeah.
They're going to be mad at you either way.
Right.
So things like this are awkward because it means this deck, when you play it with your friends and you all get together and each of you plays one of these decks, the person playing Chaos is going to be beaten to a pulp when they start randomly chucking damage around to people.
For things that they had no control over.
Yeah. It's the oops, I know we're trying to work against the Necron player right now, but I accidentally just did 4 damage to you. That person is going to be petty and do it back to the Chaos player.
Right. Yeah.
That's just how things go.
Which is funny, but not the greatest gameplay.
It's mildly irritating.
Yes.
There's quite a few things, I think, that could have been cooler if they hadn't tied that lore thing to lol, I'm so random. Because, like, the Night Rampager doesn't really make that much sense. It should just have to attack if able. Like, that's their shtick, that they're on a rampage.
Right, where it's just like always attack.
It's not just randomly goes to war with some other place when it's supposed to be doing damage to this thing. It should be hyper-focused once it's chosen. Whatever. There are problems in the deck, but they're minor.
That's fine.
So let's go into the one that I am the least happy with, which is Necrons.
Which is hilarious, because like I think this deck's actually pretty cool. But let's start off with Trazyn the Infinite, which is 4 black for a 4/6 legendary artifact creature Necron with Death Touch. It has Prismatic Gallery, which is as long as Trazyn the Infinite is on the battlefield, it has all activated abilities of all artifact cards in your graveyard. So I guess real quick on that, activated abilities are things that like you have to pay something to get.
Yeah, to tell you the exact rules of it, it's anything with a colon.
Yeah.
Which you'll see on cards where it goes thing, reward for thing. It'll usually be like tap, do a thing, or pay mana, do a thing, or sack a creature, do a thing.
Right. Okay, Brad. Tell me about Trazyn.
So, Trazyn, or Trazyn, the Infinite, is essentially the British Museum personified as a living person. Dead person. So Trazyn is, I think there's a DC character who's essentially the same thing, but it's...
Probably.
He's the dead guy who just goes around the universe, picking people out of it, and then going and shoving them in his museum. It's pretty good of a representation of Trazyn.
I do like the flavor text. The archivist of Slimenet's galleries will not rest until every treasure in the galaxy is safely within his clutches.
Yes.
Basically, just go pillage the galaxy for anything that he thinks is a treasure and put it in the museum.
Yeah. It's kind of great from a satirical point of view because the Necrons are like the space Egyptian skeletons.
Yeah.
And he is the British Museum.
And, like, he has access to, like, all the things in the museum. So, like, the Prismatic Gallery he gets access to and stuff like that.
Yes. I will say the one thing, if I have to pick away at Trazyn here, he's known as Trazyn the Infinite because he cannot die, more or less. He is essentially like a computer virus, and anytime you kill his body, he just hops to a different body, and that body becomes Trazyn, because he can just reprogram the body to be himself again, because of how Necrons work.
Yeah, weird Necron nonsense. But yeah, that's not really showing on this card.
It would be nice if he had some type of, maybe not indestructible, but just like from the graveyard, you could pay a bunch of mana to bring him back and sacrifice a creature or something to bring him back. The other thing he could do, I think, would be steal stuff.
Yeah.
Because, like, his whole shtick is whenever he's leaving the galleries, it's to go steal a random important thing or person and go shove them in the gallery.
That would be hilarious if he just, like, took your opponent's stuff.
That would be very on theme for Trazyn, especially because he has his Pokeballs that he throws out of people who have Mind Shackle Scarabs and can make them all fight for him and believe that they're fighting for whoever they're supposed to be fighting for.
Right, right.
But there's a lot that could be done. You could do a bunch more versions of Trazyn over time if they ever went back to the setting, and they would all make sense. He's a very fun character.
Yeah, I think this works well enough, but yeah, there's definitely more to it that could be done.
Anyway, so we can move on to the death marks, which are basically snipers for the Necrons. They're pretty standard, but you can read it.
Yeah, the Necron death mark is 3 black for a 5/3 artifact creature Necron with flash, and has Synaptic Disintegrator, which is when Necron death mark enters the battlefield, destroy up to 1 target creature, and target player mills 3 cards.
Okay, so here's the flavor fail with the Necron death mark. Are you ready?
Yeah.
This card is good.
I was just gonna say, like, this seems pretty solid. Like,
it's really good, and death marks in 40K are just a really bad unit, even though they should be awesome.
They should be awesome.
So I'm very happy with this card. It's awesome. But the main thing is the sniper being the shows up with flash because they can come out of their dimensional pockets that they live in, and they just phase into existence out of this pocket dimension, fire off a shot, kill a guy, and then they can phase back out. Really good job with the death marks here from a lore standpoint. I wish 40K was this good with death marks. The actual game could improve death marks to be like they are in the lore. I'm just saying.
Yeah, maybe. But next up, we've got Crypto Thrall, which is for generic for a 3/3 artifact creature construct. It has Protector, which is other artifact creatures you control have hexproof.
And the flavor text basically explains this one lore-wise, but there's a fun, darker part of it, so read the flavor text.
Bound to a Cryptek, the Crypto Thrall exists for one reason, to defend its master to the death.
So a Crypto Thrall, also known as a murder bucket or a murder chicken, is basically a little defensive guy who defends a Cryptek, which is a Necron scientist, and they'll tend to have like a couple Crypto Thralls with them to be their muscle because they're like scientists.
Yeah.
The dark part of this that isn't on this card that I love is it's mentioned in the Necron Codex that Crypto Thralls are often rivals who were bested and turned into Crypto Thralls.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, it's fun that they have this like horrible dark sub background that isn't even mentioned here.
The actual like card Crypto Thrall giving other artifact creatures hexproof, because all of the Necrons are artifacts.
Yes.
So it's just like making it so that your opponent can't target your Necron stuff with spells and abilities and stuff like that. So they can't just like go around the Crypto Thrall.
Okay, Eric, so cover the last lore one, the one that you liked best.
Yeah, I actually like this one. We've got Biotransference, which is 2 black for an enchantment. Creatures you control are artifacts in addition to their other types. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may lose 1 life and create a 2/2 black Necron warrior artifact creature token. So there's more lore that like you actually know about it, but this kind of explains why every Necron is an artifact, because they were all made into artifacts through biotransference.
Yes, biotransference was where the Necron tier went into the bio furnaces and became the Necrons because they got metal bodies. And it's actually like super dark because the vast majority of them lost their individuality and their mind and just became like a robot.
Yeah, like super not nice stuff happened, but
the average civilian or child became basically a brainless robot.
Yeah.
Biotransference itself was the event where the Necron tier became the Necrons, which is the metal skeleton versions you know.
Yeah, so it was just one of those that, like, I think the card's neat and it works well, but, like, it kind of helps explain, like, oh, this is why every Necron is an artifact and why they all care about, like, artifacty stuff. All right, you've got something to complain about with this.
I've been complaining a lot about the Necron deck. This is the prime example of it. The Necron deck feels like it has 2 major problems. One of them is that it was mono black and it probably should have been Esper, which is black, blue, and white.
Yeah, I think part of it was just because, like, there's enough Esper artifacty stuff already in Magic that they're like, we want to do something a little different.
I actually think there was other problems. The main one being they decided they wanted the Imperium to be Esper.
That's true, yeah.
And when they did that, they kind of locked Necrons into being a subset of it or going mono black so it feels at least slightly different.
Yeah.
The problem is Magic has what's called the color pie, which is every color is only supposed to be able to do certain things. This is to mechanically differentiate the colors so that different colors feel differently.
Yeah, and so it's not just a, like, homogeneous, everything's the same. It's like, okay, these things feel different because they are different.
Yeah, the problem is the way that black is allowed to interact with artifacts is basically bring them back from the graveyard, send them to the graveyard for value, or do something about the amount in the graveyard, or care about them going to and from the graveyard. It's very limited. It can do one thing.
Yeah, there is not actually that much.
And you have a 100 card deck, and a lot of them are stuck that way.
Yeah.
The more specific problem is there's just some really weird sizing issues in the deck of like this is the Harridan all over again, but like for 20 things.
Yeah.
Like I joked about where the death marks are way too good for being death marks.
Yeah.
That one's a joke, but there is actually like more problematic ones from a lore standpoint. Like comparing Night Scythe to Tomb Blades.
So, yeah, I guess real quick, Night Scythe is 3 generic for a 3/1 artifact vehicle with flying. It has invasion beams, which is when Night Scythe enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 black Necron warrior artifact creature token, and it has crew 2, which you can tap a creature with power 2 or more to turn the vehicle into a creature. Basically, crew the vehicle into something that you actually use. So Tomb Blade is 4 black for a 5/4 artifact creature Necron with flying. Whenever Tomb Blade deals combat damage to a player, that player loses life equal to the number of creatures they control unless they sacrifice a creature, and it has unearthed 6 black, which is bring it back from the graveyard and do some stuff, but whatever.
So here's my problem. Eric has seen these models. He knows the problem here. A Night Scythe is a big fighter jet. It's technically like a troop transport fighter jet where it can fly by and just beam a bunch of Necrons out from under it because it's got like a portal device under it that spits out Necrons. But it also has 2 gigantic cannons, right?
Yeah.
The Tomb Blade is a shitty hover bike.
It is a shitty hover bike.
And the Tomb Blade is like a piece of paper that just fires normal guns that the Necron warriors fire. Technically an immortal fires, but whatever.
Yeah.
For some reason, the Tomb Blade is a 5/4 for 6, and the Night Scythe is a 3/1 vehicle for 3. Now, competitively, the Night Scythe is a much better card than the Tomb Blade. I'll give them that if you want to go from that angle. But just from a size standpoint, it's so weirdly backwards.
Yeah, like in the lore of like, what the hell is going on here? It doesn't really make sense. But yeah, I mean, Night Scythe is just like a better card.
It is. But I just have that complaint 10 times over with various things in this deck.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's not the worst problem to have. I think, honestly, the worst problem with the Necron deck is that mono black artifact deck is very limited in what it can do, and you read the same thing worded 50 different ways to try to make it interesting.
Yeah.
It could have used a second color so bad. Just make them at least blue-black, although technically white-black is more philosophically correct, but whatever. There's my issues with the Necron deck. However, let's get into the home run.
Yeah, we're into the Imperium. First up, we've got Vexillus Praetor, which is 3 and a white for a 3/4 creature, Custodes Warrior with Flash, Vigilance, and the Aegis of the Emperor, which is commanders you control have protection from everything.
Okay, so this is the only Custody shown in this deck, unless I missed one. But it is a prime example of who the Custodes are. They're the guardians of the Emperor, like his personal guard.
Yeah.
And it's just really well done because they're supposed to be like the most badass dudes. It's got an okay body, not the best, but an okay body. And more importantly, it gives your commander protection from everything, which is very strong. Like, as flashy as that sounds, it is a very strong ability.
And it very much feels like you can't get to the Emperor without going through the Custodes.
Yes.
You can't get to the commander without going through Vexillus Praetor.
Your commander could fight literally anything, no matter how weak it was, as long as this dude stands in play.
Yeah.
So, it's very neat. I really like how well done they got a single card to represent the Custodes so well.
I actually also like the art because, like, I don't know, at least to me, a lot of Custodes are kind of boring looking.
Yeah, they chose the flag bearer one.
Yeah, so. Next up, Grey Knight Paragon is 4 and a white for a 4/4 creature, Astartes Knight, with Flash and Rites of Banishment, which is when Grey Knight Paragon enters the battlefield, destroy target attacking creature. If that creature is a demon, exile it instead.
Hey, Eric, do you want to explain this one?
Yeah, so, I mean, Grey Knights fight demons, and they're, like, all about dealing with the demon threat. And they're actually pretty solid, so, like, a 4/4 with Flash that just, like, teleports in and deals with the problem. I do like that it exiles demons, because a lot of the demon stuff was, like, comes back for this, or does something from the graveyard, or whatever. And the Grey Knight is like, nah, dude, you're dealt with. You're no longer a problem. You're exiled.
Yeah, it actually works really well with like pink horrors and stuff because they only work on death.
Yeah, and Grey Knight's just like, nah, dude, you're just gone. We've dealt with you.
Yeah. I will say there's a great subtype thing with all of the different classes of soldiers. So like Astartes is Space Marines, obviously. They made the Grey Knight a knight.
Mm-hmm.
We're about to read the Chaplain, and chaplains are clerics, to put it into fantasy terms. They made that one a cleric. The vast majority are warriors. I really think that the small details like that are perfect for like changing just the class.
It makes it feel a lot more unique, and it's not just like, oh, it's another person in power armor.
Yeah. All right, Eric, so read us Primaris Chaplain.
Primaris Chaplain is 2 white-black for a 3/3 creature Astartes Cleric with Battle Cry, which is whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It also has Rosarius, which is whenever Primaris Chaplain attacks, it gains indestructible until end of turn. This feels very Chaplain.
It does, doesn't it? So chaplains are basically the guys who like build up the zeal in the Space Marine and like make them feel all super jacked up on testosterone.
Yeah, they're the hype man.
Yeah. The Rosarius is the name of his weapon, by the way, but it's like the holy symbol thing that he's swinging around like a club.
Yeah, where like as long as he's attacking with this holy symbol, he's not going to die.
Yeah. I think the battle cry is perfect for explaining how a chaplain works.
Yeah, it's great.
That's just great because it's an existing magic rule.
It is.
And like this card could just be a generic card in a magic set, but when you add that this is a chaplain, you're like, oh shit, that's exactly what a chaplain does.
Yeah, that is interesting that you bring that up of like rename it, change Astartes to human.
And you just be like, yeah, okay, I get it. Religious zealot, got it.
Yeah, it's just a card in Magic on some plane that has religious zealots. Like, I think that's cool that they were able to do that kind of stuff, where it feels very Magic, the Gathering, but done in 40K.
All right, Eric, explain to us why everyone has the hots for the Calidus Assassin.
The Calidus Assassin is 4 blue-black for a 3/3 creature human shapeshifter assassin with flash. And it has polymorphine, which is you may have Calidus Assassin enter the battlefield tapped as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it has. When this creature enters the battlefield, destroy up to one other target creature with the same name as this creature.
She's the trope of the shape-shifting assassin who kills someone, takes their place, and then kills their actual target.
Yeah.
And it's just perfectly handled. Like, polymorphine is a perfect ability. So polymorphine's what they take that makes them shapeshift.
Yeah, and it does exactly what, like, they do. Like,
down to being tapped, of like, she's tapped because she killed the other one.
Yep.
I really liked how cleanly they managed to get one of the assassins to work. They didn't even use any weird typings, just human shapeshifter assassin. All of this is normal magic typing.
It is, yeah.
If you took polymorphine off this card, it would again work perfectly just as generic magic card. You slap a different name and a different picture of, you know, like an evil twin type picture on there.
It is, yeah.
Boom. Done.
Yeah, that's clean.
All right, let's talk about my favorite part of this deck. The Sisters.
Sister Repentia is 3 white-black for a 5/1 creature human warrior with martyrdom, which is when Sister Repentia dies, you gain 2 life and draw 2 cards. It also has a miracle for white and black, which is you may cast this card for its miracle cost. When you draw it, if it's the first card you drew this turn, they brought back miracle, because that's like a thing in Magic.
Miracle is an old thing in Magic that is very
polarizing.
Yes, polarizing is a great word. There's going to be a lot of people who absolutely hate Miracle.
And there's going to be some people that just adore it.
It's a great way to show the Destiny dice thing from 40K.
It is.
So, like, Sisters are all about causing miracles to happen in 40K. Like, winning things they absolutely shouldn't win and all that stuff. Going into combat unarmored and winning.
Just like stuff that like it shouldn't happen, but like somehow that worked.
I feel like the Sisters are like the highlight of the Imperium deck. Like, these are the first permanents with Miracle.
Yes.
Like, Miracle was all for instants and sorceries before.
So some of the Miracle ones that we've had in the past are not fun. Even like if you're playing it, you're just like, well, that was kind of cheap. So it's nice that they got rid of those feel bads while also making it fun for everybody, essentially. Like, Sisters Repentia is just cool.
I don't know, because late game miracling Zephyrim and having 6 of them hit play in the super late game, it's going to feel a lot like just windmill slamming and treating the angels off the top of your library. It's going to feel the same.
Yeah, that's true.
Miracle is still a very iffy mechanic from a balance standpoint, but it's very cool that it's back here.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's going to bust everything wide open.
And it feels very lore for Warhammer.
Yes. It is so correct for the sisters to have it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about my only complaint in this entire Imperium deck.
Yeah, we've got Belisarius Call, which is 2 white blue for a 2/4 legendary artifact creature human. He has Ultima Founding, which he can tap and tap 2 untapped artifacts you control to create a 2/2 white Astartes Warrior creature token with Vigilance. He also has Master of Machines, which is he taps and tap X untapped creatures you control to look at the top X cards of your library. You reveal an artifact card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
Okay, so here's my problem. Call philosophically is not blue-white at all. He is blue-black.
Okay.
So, to give everybody a lecture here that no one wants. In Magic, every color has their identity philosophically. One of white's identities is xenophobia, protection of one's people.
Yeah.
White is where you get, like, the paladins, crusading forces, stuff like that.
Right.
Black is selfishness, not evil. So, like, you can have a black hero as long as they're the anti-hero type.
Right. Where, like, they're doing the heroic things for themselves, but it's still beneficial to everyone else.
Yes, it's the I'm going to save the world because I'm part of the world and I'm not going to die, damn it.
Right. Where it's like, yeah, okay, you're doing the right thing. Maybe not for the particularly best reasons, but, like, yeah, good job.
Call, as a character, is a xenophile, not a xenophobe. Like, he loves Necron techs and, like, commits heretical shit all the time. Like, everything about him is so not white and is so black. On, like, I'm going to do science for science's sake and, like, just do things because I can and I'm amazing.
And I'm interested in figuring this out.
He's incredibly self-absorbed and has 7 subminds of keeping himself straight because he's so old. Call is not blue-white, he's blue-black. It fits in the deck.
Yeah.
There's a different Mechanicus that is blue-black. I'm like, maybe they wanted to keep him in line with his faction, but no, Mechanicus is blue-black in the rest of the deck. It's like they accidentally put the wrong symbol on his card.
Yeah, because, I mean, like, the rest of the card makes sense for Call. It's doing that kind of stuff, but I see what you're saying. We're like, yeah, it should have been blue-black.
I do wonder if the reason was they did not want him to be blue-black color identity, but make a white token.
Maybe.
Like, I wonder if someone was annoyed with the fact that makes him make tokens outside of color identity, even though legally you're allowed to do that in deck construction.
Yeah, it was like, and, like, he's a legendary, so, like, that could be, like, weird if you were trying to make him the commander, and, like, people have questions, and, like, yeah, it's probably just a cleaner, and it's like, whatever. Who cares?
At least make him Esper at that point. It drives me nuts.
Yeah, that's probably the right choice, but overall, the Imperium deck, amazing. Slam dunk, like you said.
Absolutely. Now, of course, Imperium, lore-wise, has so much lore that it's so easy to get it all right.
Right, you can cherry pick whatever you want to fit in.
Yeah, that said, like, I am so happy with everything other than Call's color identity in this deck. It even would have worked great because then you could have mixed Necron stuff into a Call deck.
Yeah, that would be neat.
Which is so on theme for him to use Necron tech, because, like, that's his shtick.
So there's a few more cards that are just interesting to bring up.
Yeah, these are your bonus points, like, just for perfect memes. These are the things people know about 40K that translated amazingly to cards.
Yeah, so Deny the Witch, which is 1 white, blue, black for an instant counter target spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. Its controller loses life equal to the number of creatures you control.
And for those who don't know for some reason, Deny the Witch is the equivalent of counterspell for 40K. It's when you use your psychic powers to stop them from using theirs.
Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like. Then we've got Exterminatus, which, yeah, that's definitely a meme. Exterminatus is 5 white-black for a sorcery. Non-land permanents your opponents control lose indestructible until end of turn. Then destroy all non-land permanents.
Yeah, so Exterminatus is where you push the big red button and nuke the planet and just delete target planet by using all your spaceships.
Yeah. Yeah, I do like that it, like, your opponent's stuff loses indestructible. So it's like, nah, dude, doesn't matter. These are planet-killing stuff.
Yeah, no one's getting out of this one.
No.
Then we've got the Golden Throne, which is the perfect way to have the Emperor in here.
The Golden Throne is 4 generic for a legendary artifact. Arcane Life Support, which is if you would lose the game, instead exile the Golden Throne and your life total becomes 1. It also has 1,000 souls die every day, which is tap, sacrifice a creature to add 3 mana in any combination of colors.
So, like, apart from this just being a pretty good card,
yeah,
the Golden Throne is also, like, perfect flavor for it's kept the Emperor alive for 10,000 years. If you would die instead, you don't. But it's got the ability to sacrifice souls to give you more power. I love it.
Yeah, there's a whole thing of, like, the Emperor, like...
You have to sacrifice 1,000 Psykers every day to keep the Emperor alive. Well, to keep the throne running, to keep the Emperor alive.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And yeah, one last call out I want to do is for Noise Marine, which is 4 and a red, which is for a 3/2 creature, Starry's Warrior with Cascade, which whatever, and Sonic Blaster, which is when Noise Marine enters the battlefield, it deals damage equal to the number of spells you've cast this turn to any target. So the card's cool, like Cascade's just fun for magic and stuff like that, but I love the art for Noise Marine. It plays perfectly well with it, and I just love the callback to, like, the old, memey, 90s Noise Marine kind of, like, stuff going on there. It's fun.
It's a Space Marine who uses a guitar to kill people.
Yeah, it's just good fun. And transferred pretty well over into Magic, actually. So...
So there's one last high point to talk about here, which is how well they reshaped a lot of Magic reprints into 40K things.
Right, because not every card in the deck is new. There's a solid amount of reprinted cards that were old, but converted in the art.
And we don't have to read all of these verbatim, but like in the Chaos deck, there is Chaos Warp, which randomly changes something into something else, which is so perfect for Chaos in 40K, of just mutating something into something else. Then you've got Hardened Scales for the Tyranid deck, which works on several angles because it's a +1/+1 counter-themed card, and Hardened Scales just working literally for Tyranid Carapace.
Right, where, like, you're turning stuff, especially with, like, the Gene Stealers, where, like, you're turning them into buffing them up and making them better, and then Tyranids, yeah, good stuff.
Beacon of Unrest wins just because it has such an amazing way of showing reanimation. It's using a Canoptic Reanimator on the art to bring back one of the warriors, and I just think Reanimators are adorable.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then Fabricate, which is a generic search your library for an artifact card, reveal it, put it in your hand, which just works really well because it's Call putting together a new weapon. These are just so perfect.
Yeah.
Existing Magic cards that work with 40K lore attached to them when you just change the picture out.
And I think they did a solid job of that throughout all the decks. Like, there's a few that are, like, Soul Ring, but...
Yeah, Soul Ring it's required.
Yeah, there's some things that are just like, you have to put it into these decks because of Magic history.
There's funner ones like Commander Sphere for Necrons being a Resurrection Orb.
But yeah, I mean, like, most of them actually just work really well, and they made good choices for the cards to be included for lore, and I think all of these will play pretty well.
Yeah, overall, super happy with these. I have minor issues in any deck because I have minor issues with literally everything. Nothing ends up perfect.
I was like, you're pessimistic always, but...
I am a realist through and through. But overall, I am shocked with how much I liked these, considering how negative I was on the idea of mixing my peanut butter with my chocolate.
Yeah, and on that, it's one of those that, like, so this crossover is Magic's Universe Beyond, or whatever they call it. I don't like any of them.
I don't like Universes Beyond in general because it cheapens Magic as an IP. There is the base argument. Even when I like this specific one, we had Fortnite last. Like, it still cheapens the game.
I think that's one of the things is like, I like these commander decks. I do think it's cool. They did a fantastic job, but I'm also not particularly happy about it because, like, even though, you know, like, play Warhammer 40K, play Magic, I'm just like, did we really need this crossover? Like, we could have done these card designs generally without having 40K be dragged into this.
Eric, Q3's profit margins needed this.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, it's just one of those that, like, this does kind of show to me, like, even when it's two hobbies that I enjoy, I'm still not happy with that it happened. Like, I like the decks, it's cool, I'm probably going to buy them, play them, but, like, honestly, I would have rather wished they just didn't have Universes Beyond, even when I play both of these. So,
yeah, it's just with the dark timeline we live in, it's one of the shining moments in it, if that makes sense. Like, we're stuck with Universes Beyond.
yeah.
So it might as well be fun crossovers and not Doctor Who.
Yeah, and crossovers that, like, they clearly spent a lot of time and effort, both on Wizards of the Coast and GW, working together to make this product actually, like, good. You know, like, it's a good crossover. It's well done. It's well executed. So, yeah, I mean, if we're stuck with these kind of crossovers, it's nice that they did this. Still would rather wish we didn't have to do that, but whatever.
All right. I think that's enough rambling about these and the idea of the decks in general. Hopefully everyone in the audience at least understands like what the crossover is and how well it was done. I think it was very well handled overall, even with my problems.
Definitely.
But let's wrap this up for the week.
Sounds good.